over, let's build a fantastic marketing journey for you to ace your next event. And to tell us more about those best practices to ace your event, I am thrilled to introduce our guest speaker for this keynote session, Taylor Ryan. Taylor is a six-time startup founder, agency owner, growth hacker, and advisor to numerous tech startups in Europe. He has over 13 years of marketing and startup experience, and Taylor has been living in Copenhagen for the past 5 years, but is originally from Washington, D.C. I see lots of you saying hi in the chat. It's great to see you all here. Prior to that, Taylor led the marketing departments of 4 of the fastest growing startups in Denmark, resulting in all 4 reaching exits. Taylor, it is a pleasure to have you here with us today, and I am so looking forward to learning all of your tips based on your years of experience. Hey, Taylor.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the intro. Really cool. Super excited, and yeah, I can't wait to kind of dive in. I'm going to move really fast to cover everything.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to cover, and we've got lots of people in the audience today, and the chat is blowing up. It's great to see you all here. I will leave you all in Taylor's excellent hands. I hope that you enjoy the topic, and I will see you all at the next session. Take it away, Taylor.
Cool. All right, I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. I'm going to go full screen mode. The plan is to give a ton of information up front, and then within kind of I think a 40-minute window, leave a little bit of time for questions. I realize, again, I move super fast, so just bear with me. It's, I don't know, I'm a creature of habit. It's what I do. So without further ado, from the current slide. So yeah, I've already gotten an intro. You guys know a little bit about me, 6-time startup founder. I've done a ton of these events. I really miss doing the in-person stuff. I can't wait for things to kind of open up. And yeah, as we talked about, I'm based here in Copenhagen, Denmark, originally from just outside of Washington, D.C. But yeah, 4 of the startups that I've come in as an employee, either chief marketing officer or the person running the marketing department, have had exits in the last 4.5, 5 years, which is really cool. And yeah, I did a little bit of event marketing, but overall it was growth hacking that really kind of moved the needle for these companies. These are my companies, so lots of different things going on. Architecture Quote, if you know any architects, feel free to send them that way. It's an aggregator platform for architects to find new leads. Growth Secrets is my online masterclass. I'm happy to send out a bunch of stuff, but I've also given a 5 off coupon code for anybody that wants to take my 8-hour masterclass. Clint is my growth hacking and creative agency. Really excited to talk about all that good stuff. We can network later. And TaylorRyan.io is, yeah, basically me as a public speaker in workshops. I don't do kids' parties. The goal is to get this kind of nice growth model of consistency and driving traffic over time. I teach a lot of different ways to do that, but today we're going to talk about events specifically. So buckle up, it's going to get weird. But yeah, my goal is to provide value. I want to make sure everybody gets something out of this. Again, I will save a little bit of time for questions. I'm going to keep an eye on my phone so that I don't go over time. But yeah, let's rock and roll. I pretty much have a good understanding of the full spectrum of people that are here. Normally, this is where I would engage with the audience, but like, oh, who's a founder? Who does marketing? Who's running an event? I'm not going to be able to do that, obviously, but for the benefits of today, let's just move on. So what is growth hacking? I'm going to use this bullshit buzzword a lot. Growth hacking is doing the most with the least amount of time and money in order to get the biggest results. So I never want to do a 1-for-1 approach. I want to do a 1 for 50, 1 for 1,000. So instead of having one meeting with one person, you could do a webinar with 500 people at it. And that would increase your overall reach and hopefully give you something in the way of a larger outcome. So basically, think of growth hacking as getting the most with the least amount of time, energy, and effort in order to get the biggest results. Some of the stuff that I'm going to show moves really fast, and sometimes I get asked, where'd you learn all this crazy stuff? And the reality is it's kind of like a convoluted answer, but it's all about systems. And marketing is technically just a bunch of systems that are interconnected. So if you understand content, you can start to apply some of the learnings, maybe to SEO, maybe to amplification. And I think if you get really good at understanding how to structure and run processes within events, it becomes a lot easier to kind of figure out how to do things at scale. So I'm going to show a few different things like that. I used this slide during an AI breaking the internet presentation at an event called Tech Festival. And it's just a long way to go to say that there's lots of different tools out there. Think of tools as ingredients. I'm going to cover different websites and different tools. This is the marketing technology landscape from 2011. This is what it looks like in 2014. You can see that the number of tools doubled. Then it got absolutely insane in 2019, and the reality is that there's just an unreasonable amount of tools between now and 2021 now. But yeah, it's crazy out there. So I'm going to highlight a bunch of different tools throughout this. The only reason I'm touching on them is because I've used them, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a tool that can do something very similar or something that you really enjoy and obviously get a good outcome from. So let's jump in. What's the purpose of events and webinars? It's exposure. And that sometimes is kind of counterintuitive. Like, yeah, I want leads. It's like, well, yeah, you want to get exposed to a larger audience in order to kind of give them a feel for what you do, and maybe the timing's right and they're ready to buy. It's also a bit of branding, of course. People need to recognize who you are within either the ecosystem or potentially, yeah, within kind of your ideal customer profile kind of spectrum. But it's also building up your marketing funnel. A lot of the new clients that I end up getting come from a lot of webinars because they're like, dude, I saw you like a year ago, I'm finally ready, or I saw your thing last week about frictionless forms, I'd love to talk. So get yourself out there. That's what these things are all about. So I know that timing can be always tricky. Think about events as like, it starts usually 60 to 90 days before the big day to really have a strong event. And this usually is a lot shorter after you've done a few of these, but they break down into really simple steps. So it's the pre-launch preparation, quick wins for speed and logistics, partnering strategy, omnichannel amplification, holding the event, and then the follow-ups. I'm going to try to run through these because I've created way too many slides. Just a little side note, if you want my slides, I am happy to send them over. You just have to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll show that kind of hack in theory and in practice how it works. But connect with me if you want my slides, because these are kind of built to be standalone where you can, yeah, take them and you don't even need, I guess, somebody talking over them. So pre-launch, what's that's all about? What's the deal? What's the deal with pre-launch? So basically, I wanted to give people a feel for what to expect. So the average webinar is 270 registrations, which is pretty good. Most people sign up at the last minute. We're all procrastinators by nature. So 46% within kind of the last week. Within the last day, you end up getting almost 30%, which is absurd. Usually with in-person and webinar events, you get about a 40 to 45% attendance rate. So a lot of people need to be followed up with in order for them to actually view the content that you worked really hard to create. So just bear in mind that you're gonna have to really follow up with people in order to get them to watch your stuff. And attendees do become leads. 20 to 40% are actually people that are potentially in a buying kind of zone. So time and dates. When is the best time to hold a webinar? Wednesdays and Thursdays are consistently the best days to run webinars. They have a higher attendance rate and they tend to get consumed at scale much better. In terms of timelines, it's actually mornings that tend to work the best. Can be a little counterintuitive. I've run a lot of after-work events and meetups in the past, but I've also seen pre-work or earliest part of the day work really well. 93% of webinars held in the morning are more successful compared to those conducted in the evening, which is kind of interesting. So pick a topic. This is always one of those strange challenges that a lot of people battle with. So you could go really broad and capture a huge audience, but it might not be specific enough to really get people excited. You also have a lot of people that turn up that might not be relevant buyers. So is that a great idea? I would say probably not. So instead of doing a big webinar on digital marketing, maybe you narrow the topic down a little bit. So the balance between broad and niche is something that isn't too narrow that only a handful of people get, but isn't too broad that everybody's like, I have no idea what you're offering. So think of it as like digital marketing, marketing automation, and then frictionless templates might be like kind of the next level of like niche. The idea is the more narrow you get, the less people attend, but the more ideal they might be for you to close. So let's take a look at different titles. I never believe in reinventing the wheel. It doesn't make sense. Use what already works. There's tons of examples of successful webinars. I've given some templates off to the side, getting benefit without insert pain point. You can use this for your own industry, your own webinars. Use an equation that already works. Stop reinventing the wheel. It's really simple. Next is there must be a number of things in your full event description in order to have the highest level of success of converting people into attendees. So you need a hook, a really strong hook just after the title that's answering one of the biggest questions or providing some form of foreshadowing of big value. You want to say who's going to be there. People love dropping names. People love seeing logos where it's like, oh, shit, you got Microsoft coming to this? It's like, no, it's not fucking Bill Gates. It's somebody that works there. Relax. But people get excited about that. You'd be surprised. The when and the where, I think we all kind of know what that looks like. And then, of course, a sense of urgency at the very end. Tickets are running out. It's a digital platform. You're not going to run out of tickets. But people have this strange thing where it's like, oh, I got to sign up now before they run out of spots. Think about it. It's a really easy thing to add, and you actually increase the conversion rate by a few percentage points just by doing that. So the webinar length, how long should you make your webinar? Most audiences at 85% are saying they want 30 to 45 minutes. People are busy. They got a million things going on. The reality is not everybody's going to be able to make a 4-hour kind of sit down. I get it. I'm totally with you. 92% of attendees want some form of interaction, a question and answer session. I'm going to try to save room for it. Just remember, hey, if you got great content, it could be 5 minutes or 5 hours, but try different lengths and see what really works for you and the different narratives that you're trying to push. So quick tips for speed. And I realize I'm moving really fast. Again, you get my slides. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, just add a message. So pick a platform. Live streaming is an interesting mix. I've had all kinds of results with live streaming. You tap into completely new audiences by doing that, and some of the different tools in the upper right, Restream, StreamYard, they're usable. I've used them. StreamYard's relatively affordable at $25 a month. I'm more of a fan of the webinar platforms because you really get to track and engage a lot of the people that are in attendance, and I think the follow-up is so much stronger with those. So there's tons of different tools out there, but InEvent is putting the event on, and I do think they have a really solid platform. So the next is creating banners. You have to be able to visually demonstrate what it is that people are going to get out of your event and as little as possible in terms of text and visuals. So usually these break down into having branding colors, a strong event title, something in the way of a subject, keep it short, speaker names, logos, date, time, and yeah, a headshot. People like faces, it's a thing. And of course, plan for different sizes around platforms. You don't have to do this in Photoshop. You don't have to be a designer. That is what Canva is all about. I don't know. Check out Canva. It's really easy. The other thing that I wanted people to be aware of is you can go on Envato Elements, Creative Market. There's tons of other places online where somebody has created all of these for you. You don't have to redo anything. And the reality is you should be using existing templates to brand your amazing webinar that you're trying to get out to the world instead of making a designer start from scratch and yeah, put in all this time. You don't have to do that. So unbranded templates are amazing. If you are having multiple speakers, which I'm going to show you why that's really important later, you should be able to give them their own templates to continue to promote. This is actually what the folks over at InEvent had sent over to me. I think it's really strong, and basically they have different sizing, they have the individual speaker stuff, and they sent it over via, I believe, a zip file, but you could also use Google Drive, you could use Transfer, or what is it, TransferWise, WeTransfer, I always get them mixed up. And then, of course, always make sure that the person that's speaking has a calendar invite. I was almost late for this, so crazy. The presentation itself, let's jam on. I don't know. I don't know how many people are big jazz fans out there, but you are not Kenny G. So don't get into a presentation where you've prepared nothing. I used to be absolutely irate. I would attend 2 to 3 networking events a week prior to moving out to Europe. I wanted to really just learn everything. And I would be so mad when somebody would get up there and they'd have 5 slides, prepared nothing, and they're like, well, what's in the weather today? It's like, settle down, Jay Leno. Like, prepare something in advance so that you can bring something to people. Because if there's 50 people in a room and it's an hour-long presentation, you have collectively wasted 25 full friggin' hours of everybody's time. Let's say it's a half-an-hour presentation. That would be the case. Don't waste people's time. Have them remember you for the right reasons. The slides need to be visually engaging. GIFs work, and that's kind of my jam, but you know, it's up to you. Everybody has their own kind of flavor. Slides needed for a webinar host and the presenters. You always have an intro to set expectations, and I had a really nice introduction, so I kind of skipped past mine. Something in the way of an introduction on yourself. A schedule can be helpful, a thank you, what to do after the presentation, so like a CTA kind of thing, and that's about it. The idea is you really want to have structure to this. So some really quick tips that I tend to use, and I've run tons of events out here as well, is basically don't pitch. Please don't sell, because nobody wants to be like hardcore sold. They're there to get value. Show results or show really cool tactics that people can pick up and run with right away. I try to mention who I am and the different things that I'm working on throughout the presentation, beginning, middle, and end, and of course adding logos and stuff like that. So this is where I would tell you, I run a growth hacking agency. I'm always on the lookout for small, medium, and large clients to work with that are interested in growth hacking and massive scaling. The company is clintmarketing.com. I also run a growth hacking masterclass online, and it's called growthsecrets.org, and I got a bunch of other stuff, but I'll go into it later. Always focus on things that are scalable. So I tell people connect with me in order to get the slides for a couple of reasons. I'm kind of like peeling back the curtain for you guys. So basically, there's a reason why I do this. It actually allows me to build direct connections super fast. So these are people that have either seen me or engaged with me, so I want them in my network. It also means they're warmer potential leads, and it's really easy to follow up. Now I do this interesting trade afterwards. So like in order for me to give you my slides, I say, great, well, I'm going to put out a little social media post, a humble brag about doing a presentation. I need you to like and comment on that in order for me to hand over what took me the better part of 2.5 days to create. And most people are like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I get extra engagement, and everybody in my network is like, holy shit, what was this presentation about? Everybody is irate about how amazing it was. And it's basically just this little engagement hack that works really well. And then, of course, afterwards, I'll screenshot all of the nice comments and put out another post that says, everybody loves me, and it's this silly thing, but it works really well. Usually I'll get 2 to 3 really interesting leads that could turn into something. Again, I run a marketing agency. So, c'est la vie. Omnichannel amplification is really what I love focusing on. So bear with me, I'm going to nerd out a little bit. If I move too fast, again, it's recorded and you get the slides, but let's dance. I think this is one of the more interesting ways to scale up the way you do webinars. So we want to create our events on multiple platforms. It's kind of diversifying your portfolio. So Eventbrite is totally free. I hope most people have seen or heard of it. Eventbrite is this really great website that lists all kinds of events, and it is calendar based and also localized. But the idea is you can increase discoverability by posting everywhere. So I go on there and then I can automatically publish directly to Facebook. So now I'm reaching another audience. Moving right along, there's a great little website called Meetup. It is not a big thing in Europe. Oddly enough, it's way bigger in the US. But Meetup's kind of in this weird state right now because nobody's doing meetups because obviously COVID-19. But you can reach directly out to some of the most popular groups. These are some of the ones on the upper right that were here in Copenhagen. And I reached out to the event organizers by basically clicking through the organizer profile, view profile, and contact. And basically say, hey, it sucks that we can't run events these days. It would be really cool. What's in it for you? That you provide value to your audience. Here's the event. I feel like it's super relative and makes sense for your audience. Would you mind sending out a quick message to everybody that's following your group? That's 2,500 people here, 1,500 people there, 5,000 there. Pretty soon you're reaching massive numbers of people. And if they don't respond, guess what? Everybody has LinkedIn. So add a personal connection note. Hey, I didn't actually hear back from you on Meetup, and follow up again and again and again. Organic reach on social media is so rough. It pains me because it's one of the services that for a long time I was doing for a lot of different companies. You don't get a big reach on your company page, and there's tons of examples of that. I have presentations just about that alone. But your personal pages still do get a lot more impressions. So the idea is that you should be promoting most of your events, of course, on your company page, but at the same time, you should be posting it on your personal pages. And that's on LinkedIn, Facebook, across the board. So a quick little Facebook hack, you can invite up to 500 people that are in your group of friends to attend your event. If you have other event managers, you can either have them invite through your event as an admin, or you could potentially do multiple events that are all pointing in the same direction. The world's your oyster, go for it. But it's just a really easy way to do it. One of the things that I tend to focus on when I'm churning out lots of content, either for myself or clients, is posting at scale on Facebook groups. So that means joining very niche groups that are relative to the topic, making sure that there's 3,000 plus group members because you want this to be scalable, and they have to be active groups. And then the goal is, to just publish a couple of links here and there leading up to the event across these groups that you're already a member of. And if you really want your post to continue up to the top, reply to comments, comment all the time, and you'd be surprised you get a fair amount of engagement off of Facebook groups. With Facebook ads, it's like the old days of newspapers. If you want to reach a large audience, you're going to have to pay for it. And it's super frustrating, but there's different ways to target. You can target competing events, so long as Facebook has those as kind of like related pages. You can also target your current website visitors, and that's the Facebook tracking pixel. You could certainly try to target group followers, but they're very few that are kind of in this list of targeted folks. Similar audiences, but my favorite one is probably people that are interested in upcoming events because they tend to go to upcoming events that they find. I do think that LinkedIn is an interesting kind of switch or game on this. I was able to get upwards of about 150 people confirm that they were going just from promoting on LinkedIn, and I didn't pay for anything. So you go really quickly down to the bottom left, just underneath on your homepage, underneath your profile picture, and you'll see that little plus button next to events, and you can create an event. And then you can invite up to 998 connections. It allowed me to do 2 different invites of these groupings. So I invited, after 2 weeks, another group of 998 connections, and I broke it down by different industries. For those that are tired of getting these things, I am too. You can actually disable event invites and now newsletter invites because they are super annoying. But yeah, just a great way of basically inviting 2,000 people. So who should you invite? And there's different ways to do this, but everybody. So anybody that you've engaged with that is even remotely relevant for this is probably worth inviting. And I'm going to show a couple of different ways to do this, but there's lots of different ways to complementary take what you do and invite people that are kind of close to it and still have a major win. So I'm going to show what that looks like. Excuse me. So I actually had a lot of traction off of using existing newsletters that are already part of different communities. So off to the right, you can see a lot of the startup communities that I'm a member of and active within, but ultimately, these are people that have thousands upon thousands of subscribers, and it takes nothing for them to add a very short description and a link to your event inside of their weekly or monthly newsletters. So get out in front of them. Every ecosystem has one. You can do Google searches to find them, but it's really easy to increase your reach by doing it that way. Slack groups are hit or miss. There's a number of really good Slack groups for growth hacking. Online Geniuses is probably my favorite one for marketing. Reddit, I think, is a little bit more active when it comes to communities that are already kind of receptive or ready to kind of go to different things. So I posted a couple of different links in Reddit groups and had a little bit of traction. Hopefully it's not too spammy, but yeah, that's the idea. And yeah, promoting on other event listing sites has been really hit or miss. Most of these look like they were designed in probably like the late 90s. So like, take it with a grain of salt. It takes all of 2 seconds. It's something for a virtual assistant or an intern to basically just post on these different sites. These are the ones that I was able to get on, but the reality is it's not that much work. So why not reach a different audience when you can? Let me dive into webinar partners. I realize like I'm moving super fast, but again, this should be recorded and you get my slides if you want them. So how do we 3x our audience with doing one thing? And that one thing is, it's like a really silly ass question, but webinar partners. So the idea is like, I want to partner with other people because if they're willing to bring their friends or their audience, then all of a sudden I've multiplied the amount of people that are turning up for this. So this should be current clients, potential clients, maybe partners, affiliates, people you've integrated with, people that said no to your business. Who knows? You can reach out to everybody. So I want to show different ways of increasing your reach just by using partners. Now, partners are basically a chance for you to have somebody that is a complementary product or service do a very short presentation alongside you so that you're able to capture both audiences and everybody wins. So one place that you could find them is listing sites. GitApp, Software Advice, and Capterra are all part of the Gartner network, but this is where most software as a service companies kind of get their first foot in the door on a listing site. There's tons of other ones down on the right side, but yeah, it's all gravy, and I think they all work reasonably well. The idea is you want to start finding products or services, or obviously companies, that are just one order of magnitude away from you that aren't in direct competition. You could also find companies within a very close proximity in the same space. ProductHunt is great for this. Not a lot of people know ProductHunt, but it's basically like the front page for people launching something. Owler, Crunchbase, AngelList, Killer Startups, these are all awesome websites for, like showing the world that you have a startup. But if you're on these sites, it means that you've at least understood that you got to get yourself out there, which means they're probably open to doing webinars. One of the easiest ways to really get some traction is find a company that's just announced funding on TechCrunch. They're not going to be a company that has a ton of traction behind them, but they are going to be a company that people might recognize, and that might be all the more reason while they're in the spotlight to say, hey, I got this webinar coming up with this really cool company named Clint, which is a digital actor. Never mind, I'm not even going to sell. But the idea is you want to find partners in different ways. Using analysis tools is a really easy way to do that. So find your best customers, your best clients, start throwing them into these tools. SpyFu, WooRank, SEMrush. Ahrefs is my favorite. That's what the screenshot is. You can find a number of competitors or similar companies to your best clients and invite them as either attendees or speakers at your webinar in order to, again, capture a bigger audience. Moving right along, a lot of the lifetime deal listing sites or lifetime deal sites are really interesting. These are companies that are desperate for traction and maybe have a little bit of the spotlight right now because they've just launched a lifetime deal. It is definitely in your best interest to find some of these kind of agile hustler type startups and play with them and see if they're interested in either being an attendee or speaking at your webinar. Who knows? It's a lot of really interesting things to kind of look at. Last little thing that I'll show is basically if somebody is a consistent and good public speaker, they're probably doing lots of events. You can find great speakers on Meetup, Eventbrite, and some of these other places down there. Just something to think about. So what does this look like? Let's say I'm a CRM tool and I want to do a webinar with like 3 or 4 different companies. I want to find one company that does, if I'm a CRM, one company that does like email validation or maybe like email list warm up. I want to find one company that does something in the way of automation and one company that does lead gen. That way I kind of covered the full thing and ultimately everybody should be integrating with my tool. It's a really interesting way of kind of creating a small little fully optimized ecosystem within one webinar to speak about the topic of your choosing. It's badass, it works really well, and by the way, everybody gets to share the different contacts and attendees, so long as you make sure to say that in the little terms and conditions, it works really well. One of the things that people always miss out on is setting a promotion schedule with their partners. So make sure that if you are speaking at my event, you have promised to do 6 posts leading up to the event, 2 per week, a video, which I did as well, 2 newsletters, maybe even an ad campaign, who knows, but plan it out so that you're able to see with some level of certainty that they've actually met you halfway. It's incredibly important. And then you can actually trust but check them. It's one of the adages that I've always had with either kind of early entry-level people as well as working with contractors is trust but check. And so there's different tools that you can use to basically see how many times a link has been clicked, and also you can use a UTM tool that allows you to really granularly say this link was clicked on via this campaign and these amount of people came through. This allows you to see which partner has actually brought real attendees and which one screwed around and didn't bring any value whatsoever. So that, you know, let's re-partner with these guys in the future and I'm never doing business with the other guy because they didn't bring any value. Attribution is key, and I could go on for days about that, but in the essence of saving time, I really want to get to this stuff. So this is the most important thing in terms of streamlining the outreach. So you can see that like all of these processes off on the right side, these GIFs, everything is kind of fluid and smooth. There is no kind of like stutter step or twitch. You need your outreach to be the same way when you're either getting attendees to come or guest speakers / partners. So it falls into these categories: targeting, discovering, email validation, and outreach. And I'm going to rapidly go through these. So targeting, I want to segment different groups of people, and that might be industry, that might be the type of tool, company size, whatever, so that I know these are the types of people that I'm inviting, and I'm going to see what is their level of engagement to know we found something here, or these people hate us or hate our messaging, and it's not worth trying to send more. This allows you to really test across different industries, different models, different emails to see what works. The next is discovery. How do I find email addresses for all these different companies? Dude, there's tons of tools out there. The reality is, like, data is so at our fingertips, it's unreal. So there's DataJar, Snowvio, Find That Lead, all these different tools. Pick one, try it out, see what you like, and they're relatively affordable these days. The most important thing you need is first name, job title, and email address. Verifying emails is so important, and I'll explain why in the next slide, but I need to make sure that I'm not hitting the spam folder or eventually getting my domain flagged as basically a spammy domain and therefore blacklisted. So I always check every list, sometimes twice over depending on what I'm doing. So make sure to validate all the emails. Burner domains. So like this is this thing that I think over the last 5 years has become a bit more common knowledge, but if you're doing large blasts of more than 500 people, you need to start warming up domains that are not the same as your main domain that you can use in case somebody or enough people mark it as spam and you're basically not ruining getting into their inbox by getting flagged or sectioned off into the promotions folder. So basically I buy up domains that are close enough to mine that redirect to the main one. So I own clintmarketing.co, even though my real domain is clintmarketing.com. I'll set and fix up all the MX records, TXT kind of files, and DKIM, and then after that I warm them up. There's basically this idea of you have to send out anywhere from 30 to 50 emails a day for about a month to 90 days, but let's just say a month to kind of get started. Some of those tools off the right side, Mailworm, Allegro, they work okay. And then after that, yeah, you're able to start really scaling up the outreach. You cannot blast a giant list of 30,000 people without having ever sent anything previously. It won't be delivered. And then we do sequenced outreach. Sequenced outreach is basically immediate email goes out first, followed by a delay of a day, second email, followed by a delay of 2 days. All the tools off on the right side do these. Some of these are mail merge tools, others are just outbound tools. By the way, if this sounds like crazy and it's like I have no idea what this guy's talking about, that's what I do for work. So if you're interested in doing a lot of this outbound stuff, please holler at your boy. I'm happy to show you how to do it and also help to scale up your efforts. The last part of this equation is personalization. Personalization has taken so many different levels of like hyper personalization these days, and I can show that stuff later if there's time. But you can see on the upper right, there's a merge field that keeps rotating with names. People see this and they're like, oh my God, that's so clever. Like you've made an image with my name in it. It's like, no, dude, what are you talking about? No, it's a merge field and we can all do this. There's different and interesting techniques that revolve around templates that allow us to create these really custom looking posts or emails that anybody can open up and be like, oh, that's clever. Because sometimes that's the difference between getting a deal and not. Outreach templates are a dime a dozen. This is one that I've included into my slides. Just know that the blue is basically stuff about my company or your company. The red is basically the company that you would be reaching out to, and the purple is the target or the person, the lead. And yeah, these things fall together pretty quickly. It's not hard to make them. They don't need to be this long. Keep them up to maybe 500 words max. I would say that's still too many. But yeah, the goal is to kind of have these different sequences of outreach that provide different value or different value adds or something in the way of messaging that kind of gets at a different point. And test them, see what works. The idea is that after an agreement, you do a button up. Button up comes from like my old days of like selling fucking windows and siding while I was still in college and shortly thereafter. Terrible job, but I found that if I stuck around for another 5 to 10 minutes and asked them questions about their life and their jobs and made sure they understood what was happening next, nobody canceled contracts. So the idea is that you really need to make sure that your webinar partners, your attendees, know when they're going to show up and what they're going to do, and that just requires a couple of one-off emails that basically solidify promotion schedule, the slides, when they're due, when the live event is, and basically a link to it. Attribution is everything. I love building attribution. It's a weird thing, and it's connecting systems. The reality is I could spend all day talking about this, use some of these different tools as a CRM, but also use some of these UTM and link tools to really track everything. Again, I could spend hours on this, but I'm not going to. Last little bit, because I want to save time and room for questions, is what happens after the webinar. So you've done a great job. People attended. It was an awesome event. Champagne, everybody's happy. Great. What comes next? So always a social media post to create some form of FOMO for the people that didn't attend, and also get a little engagement of people that were there if you did an okay job. It usually looks like a humble brag, meaning like, I'm beyond humbled to have so many people come, and I get it, like it's fine, but just put visuals out there. Usually I try to structure it with key learnings, but the idea is that these get a lot of engagement, and it's also back to that growth hack that I showed, which is I do require people to engage in the follow-up post in order to get my slides. Again, there's a ton of stuff in these slides, so connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Taylor Ryan, at least in Denmark, that I'm aware of, so feel free to connect. And then, of course, you have a stronger CTA after the post comes out. In any event, I tend to send follow-up emails right after the presentation, because most people are like, oh, I didn't realize that was today. Like, unbelievable. Can I still get in? It's like, yeah, of course you can. And you can get a free trial. You can get 10% off whatever you're selling, or 15 minutes of free consulting. I can't really do the free consulting, but I am giving like a percentage off of my masterclass for growth hacking. We can work out a deal if you say you had seen me through this event for Clint Marketing. But different templates take different shapes. I think this one is way too long, but I do use that play button visual inside of a post. You can do this fairly easily with a little bit of Canva or Photoshop, but it gives people the impression they can click right through it, which case then they're able to convert again, and you know that they're interested, yada, yada, yada. Some people are afraid to send a second and a third email after they've already kind of done their webinar. Don't be. Nobody like freaks out over this. It's like, no, I'm just here trying to show you that like I did a really good job and I'm really excited about it. And by the way, I continue to add value. So like I'll throw in an additional template, or the first 5 slides, or the strongest 5 slides, followed by, of course, a CTA, a little bit of scarcity saying this webinar is going offline in a day, so watch it before it's too late. Doesn't matter if it's not true. I always include a book a meeting type of thing if I'm growing kind of a different type of company, but Third email, maybe you want to get a little more information out of your people. You could use conversion forms in the form of basically saying I'm doing a survey to get feedback. Very few people fill these out, but it will give you a chance to see what people maybe want to see in the next one. There's just different ways to do it. So again, if you like templates, those exist for you. Have at it. It's a blast. Last little thing on this stuff is signatures get clicks. People don't realize that signatures actually get more clicks often than the emails themselves, because people are skeptical, especially if you're doing cold outreach. Just use one of the tools off on the bottom right and basically convert it to HTML. That way you don't have to pay for the tool, and then you're gravy. Other than that, I think the only thing that I really like doing after the events is kind of a post-webinar wrap-up. It's internal. It's like, what did we learn? What did we overcome? What are the things that we can do faster? All that stuff works really well. And ultimately, you're able to do the next one much faster because you've built out this checklist. You've also put together kind of a list of to-dos and all these things that you can just pull up and knock out right away, because most people aren't doing webinars like weekly. It's like once a quarter. That's just how it is. But just a much faster way of kind of keeping track of stuff. So in summary, I've touched on a bunch of different things: pre-launch preparation, partnering strategy, quick tips, speed, and logistics. Omnichannel amplification is badass. I really hope that you pick that up. If anything else, hitting different channels and finding partners is so powerful. And then, of course, the button-up, the post-event stuff. I'm saving a little bit of room for questions. I don't know. I'm a crazy person. That's like 79 slides, and I built way more in case, I had time, and I know I won't. But let's see what kind of questions we have. So I think you can throw your questions into the chat. But is there anything out there that somebody was like, oh, what was that? Or I didn't quite understand what that was. Otherwise, I can carry on with the other slides. I'm going to carry on with the other slides. I don't know. I don't see any like new questions coming through, but yeah, let's see if I can jump back into some of the slides. I'll just show like one of my favorite hacks for like large scale events because it's one of the things that I had the most fun with. So like big events are really easy to hack, and I'll show a couple of like really fast wins. Yeah, there's great things you can do with like geotargeting. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I can maybe show you some stuff on that. A lot of events have these like meeting booking apps. Brella, Dealer Room, and Grip are all of these different apps that I've scraped. So if you give me access to everybody's first name, last name, job title, and company, like, dude, game over. I'm going to scrape everybody that's in attendance. And it's not that hard to do. If you really want to do that, holler at me and I can, I can make it happen. Some websites that are large-scale conferences list all of the sponsors and sometimes all of the people that have registered for a booth, which means you now know everybody that has enough money to pay for a booth. So like Mobile World Congress, it's like 5,000 euros. It's held in Spain. It's 5,000 euros for a booth for 2 days. If you have money for that, you probably have enough money to be able to work with a really awesome growth hacking company like mine. I try a number of different outreach models, and I can go into that stuff later, but sometimes I do that without any intention of going to the event. First email is like, oh, we should meet up. Second email is like, oh no, like we can't go, the ticket's disintegrated, but why don't we connect after the event? And then, of course, after 2 weeks after the event, I'm like, oh man, I really wanted to meet up. Yeah, I've done that at scale, and I tend to get into at least 1 or 2 like closing deals that way. So if that is of interest, which it should be, I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. Let's see, my computer's still going, so I'm just going to keep on keeping on. The last thing that I want to show is like a kind of a crazy hustle that we did a number of years ago with a big event in Europe called Slush. So it was at this large company, well, no, it was at a super small company, but we wanted to make ourselves look gigantic. So we basically purchased 100 tickets to an event that normally they cost about $500 to $600. And we basically had a bunch of students and young people agree to represent us at the event, and they get to screw around for 1 day, but attend for the second day. And we would have them wearing our shirts, walking around, and everybody I met was like, oh my God, like you have so many people here. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, like we're a growing company. It's crazy you haven't heard of us. And they're like, no, I'm going to look you up right now. It was this really cool hack. We got written up in a bunch of different places for making it look like we were the biggest company there. And ultimately, we made our money back by basically selling some of the tickets just before the event, where, you know, ticket prices are like 3 times what they normally are. So yeah, a really interesting hack. And I would definitely suggest doing it if you got a little bit of money to spend and you're going for some virality. But yeah, I don't know. I can't even get into this thing to see if there are questions. Is there any question that I can hit before we're out of time? I think we're down to like the last minute. I don't know. I'll jump into one of these meeting room things and take some questions over there because I realize like we're kind of low on time, literally 1 minute left. So again, my name is Taylor Ryan. I represent Clint Marketing, which is a growth hacking agency. I also represent Growth Secrets, which is an online masterclass. It teaches 8 hours worth of this crazy stuff. I have 5,000 plus graduates all over the world, and I've priced it unreasonably low in order to basically get anybody that wants access to this stuff into it. TaylorRyan.io is basically me public speaking. I love doing events. If you have an event, let's jam out and talk, but I'm always on the lookout for cool and interesting clients, small, medium, and large. I hope this was useful. And again, connect with me if you want the slides. The only caveat is I do not send slides to my direct competitors. I hope that's okay. But yeah, I think that's it for me, unless somebody has like a burning question. I don't know. Do I have time? I don't know how they do this. Do they just like leave? I'm just going to hang out here. No questions?